Okay, so for this, what we're going to basically do is we're going to look at creating our image that is required for Amazon repository. So, like we kind of introduced in the first part of this video, part one, we need to have some type of image. So basically, I was looking back here, and if you kind of go back to um, my playlists here, you can sort of see in introduction one here. So for series one, you can basically see we had some great videos kind of on Kubernetes and Docker and Podman, and this is the type of thing that we're going to basically be doing today. So what I did was I went back and I kind of had a look and sort of see which kind of diagram we actually have. So we had some kind of diagrams here, and I've obviously linked them in the description of the video. But basically, you can think about it this way. This is what we're just going to do in this part of the video, part two. We're going to take an image for Nginx. So every single big provider provides a type of image. And you can create your own image or you can use a provider image. And basically that image we're going to pull down, we're going to create a container. And in this case, we're going to use Docker. Forget about Podman for the moment. We're going to use Docker. We're going to have a container. And that will basically run the Nginx container in a web browser. That's all we're basically going to concentrate on right now. So, and then we'll kind of push it out to kind of AWS afterwards. But just for right now, I'm doing this kind of live, so I haven't kind of practiced this before, and because I want to sort of I want to make sure that we're all kind of following together. So, like we sort of said, we were here, right? So I'm sort of staying here for the moment, right? Now, this guy Justin, very excellent kind of tutorial that he's kind of provided here. He also sort of says, here he talks about ECS, he talks about container, but basically sort of says if your application is not containers, here's a great guide, right? And basically what it does is brings you over to this um, tutorial here, which is also kind of very good. But the one I kind of would prefer to use is actually setting up this one. And this one is basically creating an Nginx image. Now, what we're just going to do is we're kind of going to use the first part. And the reason I'm kind of doing that is because I always feel when you're kind of learning something like Kubernetes and Docker, you can run an individual image on Docker, like we sort of said in the previous video. You can run it on Kubernetes, you can run it on AWS, you can run it on Azure. Once you kind of get the setup and the terminology and technology kind of learned and understood a little bit, it becomes, quite easy. The worst part about it is actually having to kind of, run multiple commands, which you can then kind of automate later on with Terraform and all different types of technologies. But just for today, we're going to do it, real manual. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to deploy a custom Nginx Docker image. That's all we want to do. So kind of go back to this diagram. That's all we want to do. Image, container, web browser. That's it. And keep it kind of really kind of simple for this video. So I'm going to close off this one because we're not going to use it. And I'm going to come down here and I'm on this one and I've put the notes, straight in here, and you can sort of see this very good graphic because you can sort of see Linux and Octopus and all these type of, this is for Docker and everything and Kubernetes. But basically what you can do here is you can kind of come down and it talks about what is Docker and you can learn a little bit about what Docker is, what ECR is, how you're going to run this and everything. So basically the first thing is we have to create, it says, create your Docker image. That's the first thing we need, right? So basically the first thing is if I sort of say Docker image list, so if I kind of go to the command line and do Docker image list, because remember I have Docker installed here because we in the first video we installed Docker here. But basically you can sort of see if I do Docker image list, you can see I just have a kind of welcome to Docker. I don't have any other image. But this is a great kind of introduction because you can sort of see that the repository right now is Docker welcome to image. So this is your image name and it's in the Docker repository. So that's all it is. You've got your tag which basically sort of says it's the latest tag. Now this could be tag 1.1, 1.0, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. These tags, obviously as you're kind of introducing a new image, they can kind of grow, or you can always kind of keep it at latest. There's all different kind of ways to do this. You can sort of see it has an image ID, so this is the start of the image ID. It's not the full image ID, but it's the start of the image ID. You can sort of see that this image was created 2 months ago, and it's this size, so it's 19 meg. So it's not kind of too big, but basically what we want to do is we want to kind of sort of say, let's kind of follow our notes here. So we're going to say make directory. So I'm in Docker, remember, on Mac. I'm going to sort of say make directory, and you could do this for PowerShell as well, but today I'm going to be using my Mac. So make directory. I'm going to call this AWS underscore ECS demo. Okay, and then I'm going to just kind of change to that folder there. So I'm now in that folder. So I'm actually in that folder now. Okay, so then here we want to say pull the Docker image for us to deploy the website. We need to pull the Docker image. So that's the next thing I want to actually do is I want to go into Docker and I actually I want to run this command here. I want to paste this in. And this will kind of take, a few seconds, kind of depending on how big this is, and how good your internet speed is, obviously. But it kind of takes a few minutes. But as you can sort of see, from me, it was quite fast, right? So I'm going to sort of say Docker image list again, because I want to sort of see, this is like, again, a Docker command that basically says, show me a list of my images here. And again, I would kind of go back to my Docker series first of all, but you can sort of see here, we actually have the Nginx latest, and it's 192 meg. So we do actually have the base image. So this is going to be our base image for our deployment. So for our image, our website. Okay, so we can do Docker images, which basically shows me, was successfully pulled. Create the Docker file. Okay, so we'll use touch command to create index. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll use touch to create. I'm just going to come down here. So we will use touch command to create index.html and Docker file. And the vim commands. Okay, so basically what we need to do here is we need to say, let's sort of see vi. So if you don't know vi, there's also videos on how to actually kind of do this, but I'm going to say video vi. I'm just looking for the name to sort of see, what did they call this here? Just Docker file and HTML. Okay, so go back here, that's fine. So I can go in here, see, they're just calling the basic Docker file. I just wanted to see the using capital. No. Okay. So I'm going to go and say Docker file, vi Docker file. I'm going to press I to insert, and I'm just going to take this code here, because remember we have this image here on our. I'm going to paste this here, and I'm going to escape because everything looks good, and I'm going to colon. And again, if you don't know how to do this, have a look at how to use Vim, which is the vi commands basically. And here I want to do the same for index.html, and I want to take this code here. It doesn't look like there's any easy way to copy it, so I'm just going to do it this way. Copy, copy, copy. Again, it's just press I to insert. So I'm in insert mode now, and paste this. And this sort of says, this is going to create me a HTML page, background color, Docker project, welcome to my Docker project, today's date is. Now I'm just going to modify this a little bit, because I'm just going to say welcome to my AWS ESC demo page. Actually, we'll just leave it a project. And then here I'm going to just sort of say this is also going to be the title page here of the website. We're just going to change this to AWS ECS demo project, just so I can kind of recognize that this is obviously ours here. So I'm going to colon WQ to save. Okay, so we now have our Docker file, and we now have our index.html, and they're in this folder. So if I sort of say, LHC mature, you can sort of see we've now basically got our two files. So make sure you save the files by hitting the escape button and using that command, okay? So now run the following command in the terminal to build the image. So now we want to, you know, don't forget the dot. Yeah. So the dot basically means, you know, use the files from this folder here. But basically we sort of say build docker build-t, and so we sort of say docker t. So we need to take this one here and I'm going into the command line here again, and I'm just going to paste this in, and I'm going to give our new image name kind of more relevant name to us. So we're just going to say ECS demo. ECS demo. And that, okay. So that's basically going to build us an image. So you can sort of see here what all we kind of did was we went in with VI and Vim and basically created a basic Docker file. We used VI to create an index page, and again, this is the way you would kind of create, you know, a lot of files on Mac and Linux. Windows, I mean, they will have this kind of Vim support, but it's probably more of a Mac and Linux thing. But and then you kind of list out your files. You could sort of see your two files here. Then all we basically did was we used the docker build command, and we specified the docker image that we want to build. And this here basically just sort of says, you know, use the docker file that we basically have inside of this demo. So we kind of have everything self-isolated inside of this directory here. So basically just use the docker file. Now you can specify another docker file if you didn't want to use the name docker file, but really, you know, just for today, it's just kind of making it life easy for us. And then here you can sort of see the output of that kind of docker file and what it's basically doing. And it's creating all of these kind of layers. And these layers, you know, if I basically kind of go in and just change this this file here, so here you can sort of see it's copying over this file here. If I just went in, you know, and changed that file to say something else, basically it would only rebuild, you know, this kind of layer, you know. So Docker is really kind of cool for that. So it just makes life really kind of easy. So if I do Docker image list again, and here you can sort of see we now have a Docker image that's basically built 1 minute ago, and it's 54 meg. So this is our first image here, and the image is based on Nginx. So it's using this Nginx image as the base image, and then we're basically adding a file on top of that to make this project look like AWS ECS demo image, right? So now we basically have 3 images on our system. What does that basically mean? That basically sort of means that you could actually use Docker now to run one of these images, you know, independently, because we want to kind of look and test this one before we go up to Amazon ECS. But let's continue on with let's continue on with the demo here. So it says build and deploy the container. Use the following command to create the image. To create a container with the image we just created earlier. So what we're going to have to do here, so if we kind of look in here, you can sort of see the name here and the actual, let me just see if I can get this. So basically the name of the container here and the new image name. Okay, so we want a name of a container because we're going to call our container something, and we want the new image name here. So it says use the following command to create a container with the image we just created earlier. Okay, so basically what that means is we're now going to run our we're going to run our image here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to change this to be AWS underscore ECS demo. And I know I'm going fast in this, you know, and some people may know this, some people may not know this, but definitely you know, study up about, like we sort of said in the previous one, study up about containers and images, because they are they're critically important. Um, let's sort of see. We'll keep it at project. Okay. So basically, the name we're going to use is ECS demo project, and the image that we're basically going to use is this one. So let's sort of see what happens here. Okay, so basically you get a warning here. You can disable these warnings when you kind of really want. Again, we're just trying this, just to kind of learn a little bit about kind of Docker and images and everything. Don't worry too much about this kind of warning here. What's kind of important basically is you can actually sort of see that it is actually container running. So if I remember correctly, and I can sort of say container list, you can actually sort of see that here's the container ID that was created. So every container that you run. So I want to be kind of clear on something. We took down a basic image. We created a file. We then sort of said, use this base image here for Nginx, which is for our website or web server. Put the basic file into that image and build me a new image from that. Okay. Then we took that image and we said to Docker, run this project on these ports with that image. That's simply what we did. Docker came back and said, I'm able to run your image because it's a valid image. If the image wasn't valid, you'd sort of see multiple errors. I'm able to run your image, and here's your container ID. So your container ID now basically sort of looks like this, which basically says, okay, I've run a container. So I've taken my container, I've taken your image. Here's the command that it's looking at on kind of startup. Here's the ports it runs on, and here's the output from your container. Okay, so we're kind of up to that part so far. Check if okay, you can also check the processes in Docker. I just want to do this just to so to get that process ID back. So, but you can sort of see it's the same one that I kind of ran here with the container list at the moment, right? So that's that. Okay, verify that the instance, verify that the container is running. Take the public VPv4 IPv4 address of the instance your Cloud9 is running on and paste it. Okay. So here I have to sort of say, okay, so what's my public IP? So I don't want to kind of, there's kind of multiple ways you can kind of do this. So if I sort of say, let me go and find my public IP address. Okay, so what I kind of did was I just went to localhost. I just basically ran this on localhost because what I kind of, thought was, well, it's a web server, right? And Nginx has just kind of installed the web server. So basically, I was here, I was in our demo, and it just says, okay, take your IPv4 address and kind of run it. But here, because I'm kind of on my local home system, you can actually sort of see that, it basically successfully runs here on localhost. Now, if I was to kind of go back into my Docker here, so if I was going to go back into my Docker, let me see, if I was to kind of go back into my Docker image list here, I can sort of say Docker container list here. You can see that it's kind of up more performance. Now, if I sort of say Docker stop this one here, paste that, you can, if I stop that now, if I stop the container running, so the image has not been deleted. The image has not been deleted, so I could rerun it in a second. But if I stop it here, basically you can sort of see that my website goes offline. Okay, so there's no website anymore because I've stopped the image, and that makes kind of sense. But if I kind of rerun, if I basically rerun my image again, it'll actually still work. But here there was a command here actually. Let me just get this for 1 second. There was a command that basically sort of said that we'll actually have to delete the old So here there's a podman. Let me see. So I'm just going to use the same podman. I'm just going to copy, paste. We're not using podman today, we're using Docker. But if I go in Docker and Docker, okay. So this command here will basically run any processes that actually have that. And what it does is it removes them from Docker itself because you actually have to remove them. So I'm going to put that into notes. I'm going to sort of say here um, basic commands to run your container include um, Docker image list, Docker container list, Docker Docker run, which is this one. Copy. Docker run, and then Docker stop. So Docker stop that container. So I need to put in container ID here, and then just kind of Docker remove, so that you can kind of rerun. That's the kind of one thing that you'll have to kind of remember about running locally here in Docker, because what you're doing is you're basically sort of saying, well, I'm going to run it here in Docker. Now if I rerun that run command here, I get a new container ID here, and basically my website is back up and running. Okay, so that's how you basically create your basic container, and you actually have it locally on your machine. Now if I was to run it again, here you'd sort of see the container name is already in use, so you could create another container with a kind of different name, and then you could kind of run two of them. But basically what you're just doing is kind of using port 8080 and redirecting to port 80 on your machine here. So this is the container IP, sorry, this is container port, and this is the machine port here. So you're just redirecting Nginx port 8080 over to your port 80 on your machine, so that basically you can run it. But if I kind of just do this here, you can sort of see that it basically runs probably if you do a kind of curl for localhost 8080, you can sort of see pulls down the same type of page. So that is the web page that's basically being pulled down. Okay, so this was just how to actually containerize your little Docker web page.